Hey guys, Lolo here. If you're thinking about planning a trip to Louisville, Kentucky, the heart of bourbon country, there is so much to do that it can honestly get a little overwhelming. And trying to figure out where to start, that's where I come in. We're getting ready to head there ourselves, so I thought I'd walk you through how we planned our trip, how we chose and booked our distilleries, how I kept everything organized, what we're packing, and some other things you can do in Kentucky besides drinking bourbon. Because trust me, you're not going to be able to fit everything into one trip. First, figure out how many actual days you want in Kentucky, and then pay attention to your flight times, not just the prices. For us, we found a late night flight out of Phoenix that gets us into Louisville in the morning. Yes, we're sacrificing some sleep, but it basically gives us an entire day in Louisville without paying for another night at a hotel. We're planning to drop off our bags at our hotel and head straight downtown, where we have already booked some distillery tours. So when you're comparing flights, look at what time you'll actually arrive and depart. Sometimes spending a little more or dealing with a red eye can give you a whole extra day on vacation. Next, figure out what makes most sense for you and your hotel. We're staying at the Marriott East because the main reason I'm going to Louisville is to attend a Bourbon Women SIPosium as a SIP scholar, and that's where the event will be held. But if you're planning a regular bourbon vacation, you may want to stay downtown. You'll be closer to restaurants, attractions, and several distilleries, and you may be able to just walk to most of your tours and everything else. You won't even have to find transportation. So before automatically booking the cheapest hotel, look where the majority of your activities are going to be. You might save money on a hotel, but end up spending all of it on transportation. Now for the fun part, choosing your distilleries. And this is probably where you'll realize you need another trip before you've even taken your first one. There are so many distilleries in Kentucky. The Kentucky Bourbon Trail website is a great place to start because you can browse different distilleries. It can narrow things down based on location and types of experiences you're interested in. For our first trip, we booked Old Forester, Angel's Envy, and Kentucky Peerless in downtown Louisville. And one of my biggest recommendations is group your distilleries by location. Kentucky is a really big state, and these distilleries are pretty much everywhere. Those three that we booked are all downtown, so instead of driving all over Kentucky, we're making our entire day out of just being downtown. Once you decide where you want to go, book your tours early, especially if there's a distillery that's really important to you. And make sure you leave enough time between reservations. A distillery experience isn't necessarily over the second the official tour ends. You need time to check in, obviously take the tour, maybe do a tasting, and look around, and obviously visit the gift shop. You'll also need enough time to actually get to your next reservation. Check each distillery's requirement before you go too. Some experiences require closed-toed shoes, may have age restrictions, and may ask you to arrive 15 to 30 minutes early. Build that into your itinerary. Another thing I learned while planning this trip is that you don't have to book the same standard distillery tour everywhere you go. These tours have come a long way in the last 10 to 15 years. It used to just be a typical, you meet the distiller, try the bourbon, and that was it. Look for special tastings. Now they offer cocktail classes, blended experiences, dinners, farm tours, and other unique experiences. Because I'm attending the symposium, we have some really cool excursions already planned, including with Bardstown, Stitzel-Weller, Bluegrass, all those top dogs in the bourbon industry. So we'll get to experience several very different sides of Kentucky bourbon while we're there. Now let's talk organization, because once you start booking this stuff, the emails can pile up fast. One of my favorite things to do when planning a bigger trip is create a folder in my Gmail specifically for that vacation. So every flight confirmation, every hotel reservation, distillery ticket, excursion receipt, anything else important can go into that folder. Then if I need something while I'm traveling, I'm not standing outside the distillery searching through hundreds of emails trying to figure out where my confirmation went. I also make a simple itinerary with reservation times, addresses, any other important transportation or little reminders that we need, like wearing closed-toed shoes. You don't have to plan every minute of your vacation, but having all of your important reservations in one place makes everything much easier. Transportation is also really important while you're planning a bourbon trip for a pretty obvious reason. You're going to be tasting bourbon. We're planning on using Lyft quite a bit while we're in Louisville. Several of our symposium excursions already include a shuttle transportation. If you're heading farther outside Louisville or doing several distilleries in one day, you can also look into bourbon tour companies, shuttles, or private transportation. Just make sure you factor in transportation into your budget because it's definitely part of the cost of doing bourbon country. And please don't spend your entire trip driving from distillery to distillery because Louisville itself has a lot to do. Downtown is beautiful. There are tons of places to eat, plenty of bourbon bars, experiences, shopping, and fun tourist attractions like the Louisville Slugger Museum. There's also Churchill Downs. Obviously, everyone knows Churchill Downs because of the Kentucky Derby, but there's also tours, racing, and different events happening throughout the year. So definitely check out their calendar before your trip. And here's something that is easy to forget when planning your bourbon trip. Kentucky is not just about bourbon, especially if you're traveling with people that maybe don't want to spend 5 straight days inside distilleries. There are tons of outdoor activities, hiking, kayaking, lakes, beautiful sceneries, and caves. Kentucky is home to Mammoth Cave National Park, which is the longest known cave system in the world. So definitely check out the Kentucky Tourism website when you're planning a trip. You could easily combine a few days of bourbon with hiking, exploring caves, and some other fun outdoor adventures. And that's part of what makes Kentucky such a great place to come back to. You could plan a completely different trip every time. Now let's talk about a few things you can pack that aren't necessarily your normal vacation essentials. First off, it can rain pretty much at any time in Kentucky, so you want to make sure you bring either an umbrella or a lightweight poncho. We're going to be moving between distilleries, events, and different areas of Louisville, so I'd rather have rain gear sitting unused in my bag than spend a day soaking wet. Also, if you're doing the Churchill Downs thing, check what kind of event you're attending and have a little fun with your outfit. I'm bringing a derby-style hat, as well as a fun outfit for our Women of Whiskey event. You're in Kentucky, this is your opportunity to dress the part. And here's possibly the most important thing on this entire packing list, your ID. I figured you'd probably remember this anyways if you're flying, but just in case, please don't forget your ID. This is bourbon country, they're going to require you to show your ID. So of all things for you to could accidentally forget or leave sitting on your kitchen counter, this one would be a terrible mistake. If you are taking a red-eye like we are, I also recommend bringing a travel pillow and whatever else helps you sleep comfortably on a plane. We're landing in the morning and pretty much immediately starting our day, so I'm going to try to get as much sleep as I possibly can on the flight. I'd also throw in some snacks in your bag. When you're bouncing between distilleries and tours and tastings, your schedule may not line up perfectly for when you're hungry. Having something small to munch on between or in between the tours can be a lifesaver, and probably a pretty smart idea when you're tasting bourbon throughout the day. And now for possibly the most important Bourbon County packing tip. Do not pack your suitcase to the brim. If you think there's even a slight chance you're bringing bottles home, leave room. For flights within the United States, alcohol over 24% up to 70% is limited to 5 liters per passenger in a checked bag. That works out approximately 6 standard 750 milliliter bottles. The bottles need to be unopened and in their original packaging. Unfortunately, any alcohol over 70% is not allowed, so definitely check with your current TSA and airline rules before you fly home, especially if you're buying anything higher proof. And don't just toss these bottles in your suitcase and hope for the best. You can use bubble wrap, but we bought these really cool inflatable bottle protectors. You slide the bottle inside, inflate the chamber around it, and it basically gives your bourbon its own little airbag for the flight home. So we're intentionally heading to Kentucky with some empty suitcase space, although I'm slightly concerned we're still going to find a way to run out. And probably my biggest planning tip is don't try to do everything. There are way too many distilleries, restaurants, attractions, and experiences to try to cram it all into one trip. Pick the distilleries you're most excited about, group things geographically, book your must-do experiences ahead of time, but also leave yourself a little breathing room to explore. Honestly, I think that's one of the things that makes Kentucky so much fun. You're not going to see everything. You're not going to be able to visit every distillery. You're definitely not going to be able to try every bourbon, which gives you an excuse to come back. So that's how we're planning our trip to Louisville and Bourbon Country. We've got downtown distillery tours, some unique excursions through the Bourbon Women SIPosium, Churchill Downs, tastings, workshops, and hopefully a little time to actually explore in between. And I'll be filming along the way, so when we get back, I'll be able to tell you what was worth it, what we'd skip, our favorite distillery experience, what we learned, and what I would do differently when planning for our next Kentucky bourbon trip. Because something tells me this will not be our last. Next stop, Louisville. Have a good one, guys.